Hello. Hello, comrades and friends. Welcome to the 13th episode of Dust James' weekly assault on U.S. empire. Revolutionary, anti imperialist, working class analysis. I join you on this holiday weekend, United States. It's Easter weekend, Good Friday yesterday. Easter tomorrow. People are told not to be with their families, stay home, stop the spread of the virus. Trying times, hard times. It seems like normally when we're all working, trying to seek out an eager living in this country, we're not really confronted with the reality of our social network, of what's going on, and the holidays can be a real depressing time for a lot of people, especially now that we can't come into contact with the family members that we need to continue and maintain our mental health. So I'm glad everyone's here with me. I'm talking about a new future of socialism, exposing the lies and the brutality of the empire in which we live under. In the United States, there's some very positive aspects of Christianity. I think Christianity is kind of what led me to communism, socialism, and a scientific understanding. The Sermon on the Mount of the meek shall inherit the earth and some of pacifism kind of encouraged me to take on this all philosophy, which then apply material conditions to. It kind of led me where I'm at. And it reminds me, and now we're talking about Easter, and it reminded me of Caleb Maupin shared something on this line, and it reminded me of a song by Woody Guthrie. Jesus Christ was a man, fought for the poor, slain by an empire. And this is, I'm just getting to the idea of the idea of getting out of the movement into the masses. We should be using the positive elements in the working class. It seems like even through the concrete of imperialist media and the imperialist narrative comes the life and vegetations like grass in the cracks of concrete. And we should be using those positive aspects to mobilize and organize all the workers and any force we can to help fight for a better future for working people in this country and around the world. I have a short introduction today. I actually, for the first time, I made a short video, which got a lot of likes off of this. I might continue to do that. I'm not really adept in video editing. If anybody wants to volunteer to look through this one and look through previous episodes and get little snippets of what I'm talking about, you're free to use it. Put it on your channel. I don't own this. This right here. I'm building this YouTube channel solely for the fact of getting this message out here. Any content I put on here, download, repaste, take these ideas of your own. But I don't care. Just spread this message. So in that short video, I believe I titled it The Virus of Monopoly Capitalism and the Coronavirus. And I hinted on some of the conditions in which the lower strata of the working class, along with oppressed nations in this country, uniquely face. We're uniquely the ones attacked by the system, the afterthought. In times of crisis, they first save the capitalist system. And then they might, if they got room left, they might save the upper strata, maybe the white liberals and the in the middle and the upper opponents of the middle class. But it's the lower strata of the working class, and specifically the oppressed nations, that face the brunt of a crisis. And this is shown as the data comes out this week. New York City released its Latinos, Chicanos, Raza, whatever folks have come to call the majority indigenous population that comes from Latin America, Central and Latin America. African Americans, Afro Americans, folks are first hit. The death count is staggering within the communities of the oppressed nations. It's 3 times, or it's asked 3-4 times more likely to die than a white person, and more likely, and that's because we are the proletariat in this country, the lower strata of the working class and the oppressed nations. Growing up in poverty in North Carolina, with a family of 8 and a single wide trailer, and some of the worst schools in the state, when I eventually got into the workforce, well, first in the schools that I was forced to go into, I was pushed into the lower tracks, the remedial, the regular, and the richer and whiter students were pushed into the more advanced classes. So segregation to begin with, class and racial segregation to start with richer and whiter kids going to private schools. And then within the public school system, you had a track-based system where they put richer and whiter kids in the more advanced classes and funded less discrimination upon discrimination of the working class and oppressed nations. So a lot of my people I was in school with were people of color and people of the oppressed nations. And then when I was later pushed into the workforce to eke out a living in this society, the majority of my coworkers and a lot of the jobs in the meatpacking industry and cosmetics production, construction, sanitation, you name a menial job and I've done it. And the majority of my coworkers have been of the lower strata of the working class and from oppressed nations. So, and then my neighbors, I've lived around, people of color and the working class, were thrown together in this. What do you got there? Okay, so the coronavirus is affecting those who are considered essential and are forced to continue to work for just simply to pay the rent, simply to provide food. We are forced to be exploited, and jobs that keep this country going, that feed this country, that transport the goods. People in the gig economy, Uber drivers, Postmates. Interesting article I saw on Postmates of people getting a contract of someone to bring them groceries, promising of a big tip, and then using the app and cutting the tip when the transaction finally goes through. Just a new version of wage theft in the new time period of the digital revolution and automation. Let's talk about the concept of oppressed nations. There has been affirmative action for white people in this country from a long time, going back to slavery, onto the brutal attack of Jim Crow laws in the South, onto voter suppression, discrimination that I mentioned in the schooling system, a schooling system based the opportunity school along with opportunity based on where you live. And where you live is relegated to how much money you have. How much money you have is relegated to a job, which the new Jim Crow system has legally discriminated against working class and those of Latin American heritage and the working class in general. I've seen a lot of good positive articles on this. I saw some from Frizzo, Freedom Road Socialist Organization, talked about the oppressed nation of Afro-America and the coronavirus. I've seen mass work, mutual aid in the community by groups like the New African Black Panther Party. I think through Facebook, I was somehow connected with Zulu's Sherrod. Friends, I was able to see his lives, and somehow I saw a radio show shared by the Facebook group ran by Rashid Johnson, Kevin Rashid Johnson, and I was able to get in contact with the person running that Facebook group, and I was able to buy this beautiful book that comes from a scientific socialist perspective of the oppressed nation of Afro-America. I also heard something interesting. I've been watching a group called Black Hammer. I was able to give a small donation to help their good effort. And the leader of that group said something very touching, and that's that this system, the imperialist, racist, oppressive government of the United States, does not care about the working class, and specifically does not care about the oppressed nation, the oppressed African nation within the United States. And they're organizing to give people masks and food and help each other and build a revolutionary organization. Very inspiring stuff. I'm going to go into my current events section, a short introduction. So the big thing that's on everyone's mind right now, Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the race. He says he has suspended his campaign, but he will continue to collect delegates to have influence on the platform of the Democratic Party. This is obvious. This is an obvious sheepdog move. Explain what a sheepdog. A sheepdog is an animal, a dog, who lead the sheep, who have their wool extracted by the master, the oppressor, the master, and eventually kill the sheep. The dog, an animal. The sheep see the dog as a friend because it is an animal. What it is working for, the human who is exploiting the sheep and eventually will slaughter the sheep. This is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders comes off with a pro-working class platform, healthcare, education, etc., and has energized a portion of the American people, specifically the youth, to support him, extract funds from this group, and then push and coerce this movement into the Democratic Party against one of the worst war criminals in U.S. history, Hillary Clinton, and now the racist, rapist, Joe Biden, which he will support at the Democratic National Convention. It is obvious he has been a sheepdog from the start. He has voted for years the positive revolutions in Venezuela and the progress of the Chinese people and the people in Nicaragua who have come out from underneath the influence of the global economic system of imperialism. He has viciously attacked them. And now he has the perfect way of sheepdogging, continuing people to vote in these elections so he can then use that power to get a progressive platform of the Democratic Party, which the Democratic Party had the last time. It was the same thing he did last time. You heard on NPR, oh, we have the most progressive Democratic platform ever. But none of these progressive platforms have actually come into reality. These are false promises. He continues to build delegates, so he has more influence to make false promises to convince more people to support the left wing of the imperialist hawk that is keeping us poor and destroying the lives of people all around the world. Sanders is not a socialist. Bernie Sanders is an anti-communist imperialist. He is not in favor of nationalizing the banks. He is not in favor of nationalizing the oil companies. The oil and banking oligarch controls this country. They are the monopoly capitalists. They are the basics of imperialism, monopoly capitalism. Without the monopoly capitalism in the United States, the oil and banking cartels, there's no imperialism. And there's no destroying imperialism without destroying the monopoly capitalist oil and banking class. And that needs a complete attack on their power. Anything short of this is simply making the system more effective to carry out these imperialist wars and coups and to extract resources for the oligarchs here in the United States. I said earlier, I did not vote for Bernie Sanders in the primary. I decided to take part in the first North Carolina Green primary. Shout out to Antonio Nudge, activist in North Carolina, and others for making it possible to get on the ballot and voice opposition to the right-wing, left-wing, Republican, oppressive, imperialist duopoly. I was a little unsure about the candidate, Howie Hawkins, but voted for him nonetheless. I was actually going to, if there was a write-in spot, I was going to write in Ajamu Baraka, one of the leaders of Black Alliance for Peace. Very strong organization that continues to get one of the oppressed communities, historically oppressed communities, against imperialism and stand in solidarity with the rest of the world. And I saw this week that Ajamu Baraka is endorsing Howie Hawkins. This cements my support of Howie Hawkins. This is my electoral choice from the voting opportunities in my state. The only party on the ballot other than Democrats and Republicans for president is the Green Party or the Libertarian Party. And the Libertarian Party, although they may support some anti-regime change policies, they still contain elements of national chauvinism, and they are also being used to attack the small bit of infrastructure we have in this country, the small bit of safety net that we have. The libertarians are used as a battering ram of austerity against the few programs that we do have in this country. So I'll be voting for Howie Hawkins for president. Think about all the money that went to Bernie Sanders. What if this money would have gone to Howie Hawkins from the beginning? Think about the votes and the wrinkle we could make in the system. What if Bernie Sanders didn't exist? People wouldn't even care about the election. People wouldn't come out to it. Why would they support people like Biden, etc.? We could organize third party from the beginning. And even that idea, I think, is too national and too close to the electoral system. Donations to Bernie, horrible. Never donate to Democrat. Maybe a Democrat, an insurgent Democrat on the local level, not tied to the party, that's simply trying to win to bring things for the people. I can see that. But on a federal scale, do not ever donate to a Democrat on the federal level, especially the presidential level. Now, let's say we give that money to Howie Hawkins' campaign, which I like. It's good. It's needed. But even more important than that, I would suggest donate to your local revolutionary group. Don't have a local revolutionary group? Black Hammer, New African, Black Panther Party. Don't have a group like that? Make a group like that. Get with your friends and neighbors. Study Marxism. Study revolutionary politics. Donate to that group. Pay dues to that group. Keep the power and the money close in your community and use it for revolutionary struggle. To fight for our needs now and to fight for a better future. Speaking of Ajamu Baraka is also a writer from one of the best publications, one of the best anti-imperialist publications in the United States, which is the Black Agenda Report. And I saw a good special on a YouTube show called Primo Nutmeg, talking to another powerful revolutionary figure, rewriting the historical narrative. Margaret Kimberly, with this one, who recently wrote this wonderful book, Prejudicial, taking the word prejudice and presidential together. I've said before, kicked Joe Biden, who they see as presidential, which means code word for he is racist and more likely to be voted on by the racist white populace in this country. But she made a great quote on there. She talked about, if you want to admire a white man in this country, admire John Brown, who gave his life fighting to end slavery and helped kickstart the Second American Revolution, the Civil War, that needed violence, no other way but violence, to destroy the power of the slave oligarchs in the South of the United States. I think I didn't write down the quote, but there was sentiments in that interview where I think she echoed what the sentiments which the organization Students and Youth for a New America echo, which is, I believe she said, we need new heroes. I'm paraphrasing her. We need new heroes. We should lift up those who spoke out against wrongdoing in the past. Make statues of John Brown and others, Harriet Tubman. Make those the heroes of our past. Look back into the U.S. history. Take down the statues and the idols to Thomas Jefferson, who spoke of freedom, but held slaves, raped his own slaves, and held his own children in slavery. Tear down those statues, tear down those ideals. Stop glorifying in our schools and our history. Find out the real history. Find out people from our past who did speak out against racism. Put out this sentiment in the left anti-racist sentiment from the past in the America, and then look at the country we want. Look and build a country free of national oppression, free of class oppression. Build a new America. I'd really like it if Howie people around Howie Hawkins, I think you should ask, maybe she's doing a book tour, but ask Margaret Kimberly to be your running mate. Howie Hawkins. Broaden the appeal. Get it broad bass. Work with Sell. Build a broad front. As the organization Telejaguar, Matt Cedillo has been doing good lives. Follow Matt Cedillo, the Chicano revolutionary poet. Buy his book, Mowing Leaves of Grass. He's offering a class, a $50 class. I wish I could be a part, truck driving, from his home to show people his writing method. But I noticed one of his lives, he called for issue-based. Instead of being holden to the Democratic Party, we can form broad coalitions around issue-based issues. Build power to actually get health care. Build power from any group and anybody willing to fight for this. To get health care, education, jobs, housing. This is what we need. This is what we produce. We, the working class, produce everything that's produced in this country. We are the source of all wealth. Let's demand our fair share of it. Shout out to Daryl Mitchell. Thank you for coming on this stream. So I'm going to go past the sham of electoral politics in this country. I'm going to move on to an event that happened at the U.S. border. A woman fleeing violence in Guatemala. Violence created by U.S. imperialism. Violence and chaos created by the government, which is installed in doing the bidding of U.S. imperialism, was forced to come to the United States. And through Donald Trump's wait in Mexico, she was forced to live in squalid and horrible conditions and makeshift refugee camps on the U.S. border. And finally, seeing that desperate and pregnant, she pushed her way and came in the United States to try to eke out a future for survival, to eke out some survival, cross the U.S. border. And she was reprehended by border agents. And there, in the custody, the border agent's custody, she gave birth holding on to a dumpster, holding on to a trash can. She gave birth while still in her pants, in the custody, in the ICE custody, the new Gestapo of the United States. Say that again. A woman gave birth holding on to a trash can, still in her pants. After being pressured here by U.S. policies that created violence and chaos in the third world, in Guatemala and Central America, and then forced to give birth with her pants on, holding a trash can. And then she was sent to the hospital, made they were okay, and then they were detained in custody without blankets, newborn and a mother, detained and not given blankets. Talk about this new show everyone's watching, The Tiger King. Everyone feels for these animals, endangered animals, kept in cages and bred in captivity and sold. And all these white liberals give money to these causes for animal rights, but don't even know about the people raised in captivity. Think about that. Mom giving birth, holding on to a trash can, and then immediately pushed into captivity. That is being born into captivity. Where is the white liberals? Middle class white liberals continue to vote politicians like Biden and Obama who continue to destroy Latin America. This is the continuation of the genocide of indigenous people, the legal framework of imperialist oppression, enact with the oppress policies on the border. In reality, giving from a material scientific socialist perspective, is the continued genocide and oppression of indigenous people. What if all the money that's given to Bernie Sanders, it's given these animal rights groups, would go to revolutionary movements in Guatemala to overthrow the government there, or revolutionary movements like the media organization Telejaguar, simply to tell the truth, the story of the proletariat, the oppressed nation of Aztlan. My third and last current event. As you know, I like to read the Wall Street Journal. When talking to themselves, the capitalists will expose a little more of the information. And this right here is the weekend edition. And in the weekend edition, they're able to save up and develop stories. And right on the front page, so I talk about how imperialism creates violence and poverty in the third world. And they put down anybody who stands up against their power, who dares to strike out and forge their own destiny outside the influence of the monopoly capitalist. Right on the front page, Kim Jong-un's secret antagonists. In this article, the Wall Street Journal, continue on A12. In this article, the Wall Street Journal brags about a U.S.-funded organization. U.S.-funded organization that goes against, they admittedly go against European and Chinese law to try to attack the achievements of North Korea. They basically go against Chinese, they break. A U.S.-backed organization, the Free Joseon organization, praised by the Wall Street Journal, admittedly breaks Chinese law, breaks European law to try to break out and steal the intelligentsia of those in the embassies, the North Korean embassies around the world. They go in there, manipulate, bribe, try to get the people that were educated by the limited resources they have, a landlocked nation, North Korea. The few people with the limited food sources they have because of the sanctions, and they take away those who they educated their whole lives. And the US comes and bribes them and tries to get them. This is part of the process of brain drain. This is how the color revolutions worked in the former Soviet Eastern European nations. What they do is they use a cultural warfare, a cultural warfare, outright bribing to try to get the intelligentsia, try to get the most educated forces in these countries to flee or to rebel and destroy the countries that's helping the people of that country. North Korea would be a slave state of U.S. imperialism, like those around them, if it wasn't for the brave, courageous struggle against U.S. imperialism to form the nation of the People's Democratic Republic of Korea. And now, in the Wall Street Journal, they're bragging about breaking laws in China, breaking laws in Europe to try to get these people out, bribe them out. And then it goes on to say, just plain blatant out attacks on the people of North Korea. Then it says that North Koreans fear that the U.S. is going to take these forces, which they bribed to get out, and then use them to implement them in a new regime that's friendly with the U.S. This is Guaido, the Guaido in Venezuela. The U.S. imperialism has basically trained Guaido to be their next puppet. And the people that this organization is breaking the laws for to get from North Korea, the U.S. will then use them to go back and impose a regime against the people of North Korea. And in this Wall Street Journal, they are overtly praising terrorists and saboteurs of a sovereign state to attack the people of Korea and North Korea. As they try to bribe off the intelligentsia of the anti-imperialist countries like North Korea, Venezuela, etc., so they try to use their money that they stole from us and that we produced, is they try to lure them over here to be wealthy. Money they stole from us to try to go back and implement a regime controlled. With that money, they are denying us. We should be forming revolutionary anti-imperialist organizations from the working class, the oppressed nations, and the lower strata of the working class that is having our money stolen as they try to foment the contradictions of the anti-imperialist countries, destroy those countries. We need to organize on the contradictions right here in this country, in the belly of the beast, where we see we're being robbed and stolen from, forced to live in inadequate housing, not given health care, on the front lines, dying because of the virus of COVID-19. We take these contradictions and we organize anti-imperialist revolutionary organizations to overthrow them, to overthrow the monopoly capitalists, to destroy the power of the banks, to destroy the power of the oil companies that we are sent to die in wars for. So, thanks for joining me, everybody. I think I'm going to go into my conclusion. If you like this video, subscribe, hit the bell, make this a bigger conversation, share it out, download this, edit it, Take these ideas, write articles based off ideas, get this message out there. So in conclusion, the U.S. government, controlled by the monopoly capitalists, sole purpose is to save capitalism. This is evident in the bailing out of the banks and the bailing out of Wall Street. Why we, the working class, specifically the lower strata of the working class and the oppressed nations, are dying in high numbers because of this virus. They do not care about us. They don't care if we die. We are simply appendages to the machines that they need to continue this system and continue this empire. Conditions are changing quickly. In the latest crash, more people are being kicked out of the middle class, are being pushed further into worsening conditions. This contradiction of the oppressive nation and the oppressed nations within, contradiction of the capitalist and the lower strata of workers in this country, truck drivers, undocumented immigrants picking food, the prisoners, those whose rights are taken away by the new Jim Crow and forced to dig graves in New York City. We can organize around these changing conditions. This is the idea of scientific socialism. It's this idea of scientific socialism that Lenin organized, of Leninism. You organize around these contradictions. So as more people are being pushed into worsening material conditionings, there's more opportunity to organize. We need to get scientific socialism, the foundations of Leninism. Marx, this book, Wage, Labor, and Capital, very easier, a lot easier to understand than Capital. Get this into the hands of your co-workers and community workers. Build grassroots revolutionary organizations. Stands in solidarity with the oppressed nations around the world, the people of Venezuela. The suppression of Venezuela, a nation of indigenous, black, brown, and poor people who forged a new destiny, rewrote a new constitution as a collective, voted on that constitution, a constitution that ensures economic rights for the people, not a constitution like the United States, written by slaveholders like Thomas Jefferson, who raped his own slaves and kept his own children in slavery, but wrote their own constitution as they put battleships of soldiers taken from the working class to put brutal force to overthrow Maduro, the popular elected leader, the voter suppression, and the outright destruction of the people's governments like Venezuela is in direct correlation to the voter suppression in the United States. The Electoral College, which gives more middle-class, whiter voters more power than the darker-skinned and more working-class people in California that have been forced off the land into the cities. The Electoral College, the Senate, voter IDs laws, this suppression of the peoples, the working class, the oppressed nations, this suppression of political power here is in direct correlation to the political suppression of the people of Venezuela. As we teach our neighbors Marx, as we teach the scientific understanding of our oppression, as people are forced in more desperate situations and are ready for a revolutionary alternative, we can push to build workers' organizations around single issues, organizations to build workers' power outside of the influence of the Democrats. the Democrats. I heard an NPR special. I'm not sure if I talked to this. So I talked about the Guatemalan woman who was forced to give birth, holding on to a trash can still in her pants. At the same time, you have white upper middle class liberals complaining that they can't have their doula, which is an advocate for the mother, which is something we all should have. We're being denied basic medical care. That's another thing we're being denied, is workers who produce the wealth. My son was born, and I had just gotten off the road from working a 60, 70-hour week. And I had trouble staying awake to see my son being born. And my wife kind of was mad at me that I didn't advocate enough on her part. She ended up getting a C-section. And they say if you're given a doula, this is something that rich, mostly white folks have. You're given this doula, you're less likely to be given a C-section. This is another thing that they have that we should. But the white liberals of NPR who are backing Biden, politicians who are creating the conditions in Latin America that push people here. The Guatemala woman was forced to give birth holding onto a trash can still in her pants. The working class are denied basic health care. We need to find organizations that can speak from our voice. We should not be funneled. We should not give donations to the imperialists. A donation to the Democrats is a donation to your oppressor. Joining the U.S. military is you fighting for our oppressor. We should build broad front coalitions to demand housing, education, healthcare. And even beyond our basic needs, we can thrive. A new world is possible through socialism. If we could nationalize the banks, nationalize the energy sector, take control of the means of production, we can use those means of production to invest in new technology that make our lives better. We can not only survive better, we can invest and create a new world. We can create new technologies that don't destroy our environment. We could create, what if technology wasn't for the benefit of capital? What if technology was used to benefit workers and human life in this country? I see a future if we fight hard and we struggle. We could work 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day, and live better than millionaires. Continue investing and growing society till we reach a point where work is no longer even enforced, where there's so much material abundance that we can take as we choose, work as we choose. This is communism. Thank you for joining me. Have a good rest of your day. All power to the people.